And we are live, Senators.
Thank you again, Alex. This is just a reminder for those who are out in YouTube land that this is the Senate Committee on Institutions. Today is still the 25th of February, 2022. We are coming out of a 15-minute executive session, which we were discussing updates on security issues at the State House, and we are concentrating on primarily brick and mortar. There is nothing out there pending that is a direct personal threat of some kind right now. We did not take any vote, but we have, from a brick and mortar perspective, been brought up to date on what measures have been taken since we were all last in the building. It is now 1:45. Our next witnesses are due in at 2 o'clock. And so committee, I think we can.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Senator, but I actually do have them ready for you now.
Oh, you do?
Just continue.
Okay. You guys want to take a break or you want to continue?
Go ahead. Go for it.
All right. We're going to allow those folks into the room, if you would, Alex.
Of course. Letting them in now.
Oh boy, look who's here. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Jonathan, they gave you a great introduction there.
Senator Ash, look at that. Let's all rise. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. Son of a gun. You gotta get a haircut pretty soon here, you know.
He got Corey to shave.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Doug's a big Yankees fan, and if you remember, George Steinbrenner used to have the rule like no hair below here, and no, you could have a mustache but no beard. So I've been pushing the boundaries.
Interesting. Well, good to see you back. Is Doug coming or not?
He is, but I'm not sure. I've tried to reach him in the interim because you guys could start early, and I just wasn't able to reach him. So we could wait a second and get going.
Yes, we can wait a second.
Well, how are you enjoying your job, Tim? All right.
Every day, making government a more efficient and effective enterprise.
Starting to sound like a Republican.
Yeah.
Ross, nice to meet you telephonically.
Mr. Ash, same here.
You don't get to sit in the chair I used to. Well, I've been on both committees you're on, so I hope you're enjoying both, including this one. Joe can be a little bit abusive in his chair style, but
we've learned to live with that. You know,
he's a tyrant. He's an absolute tyrant.
Yeah.
He's also retiring shortly, so that's all right.
So Russ, you don't have to be well behaved for next year for him to treat you well. Let's remember that.
Russ and I are together all day.
The well-behaved part hasn't come very natural, so it's all been good.
Russ is stuck with me all day, Tim.
We were just remarking that Russ has never actually been in the building with the Senate yet, even though he's been a senator for all this time.
I went for a little orientation, and the next day they shut the State House down, and I went for the swearing in a little bit of a hybrid fashion. And then I was there last summer, and I just said, I'm just going to stop in. I went and sat in my Senate seat for a little bit. And other than that, for maybe like 40 years ago, I'm the only 3 times I've been there.
Oh,
pretty incredible when you think about it.
And everybody what's the sense on the 8th? Is everyone going to go back, or some people going to stay remote?
Some people will be remote. We've got Thursday and Friday scheduled for floor time. Tuesday and Wednesday will be committee time, but the chairs of each committee are entitled to let their committee members participate remotely or not. And I would suspect strongly that each chair will say, if you want to be remote, you can.
Yeah.
It's very, very different from the House, though. The House has been back all this time. It's getting to the point where we as a Senate might be embarrassed if we keep up this half in, half out routine.
Well, the House committees, it's interesting to see them from afar because many of the presenters continue to be remote.
Yep.
So you have the people all in the State House, but the people talking to them are actually still not there. So
Right.
it's still a very Zoom-based experience.
Yeah.
I haven't heard any complaints about it. I think people who want the opportunity to testify have it. When we're live back at the State House, it's going to be difficult because some rooms only allowed 2 people to testify. So it's going to be a juggling act.
Jonathan, you got your hand up.
We can't hear you.
Can't hear you. Nope. Now, if we can hear you because you've put your earphones in, I'm going to be really impressed with your system. We still
Can't hear you,
hear
Jonathan.
You may
Jonathan's one of our lead auditors, not our AV man.
I was going to say, you may want to go out and come back in and watch to see if you can hit the button that says participate by audio.
Well, while we're waiting, all I can say is I arrived in 2009, middle of a massive recession. I left in the worst part of the pandemic. There was the governors never wanted to spend any money at all in between. And now there's so much money, you got to duck or it'll hit you in the head. I can't believe
Right.
it.
And Tim was an excellent pro temp. Did a great job.
Well,
Great.
thank you. I would have liked about $1 billion to spend. That would have been fun. I don't even know how you can spend it all. There's so much.
It's
Oh,
hard.
don't think they're not trying.
Oh, don't worry.
We'll find a way.
Fine.
We'll find a way.
Yeah.
I'll have 17 ways to spend it.
Problem is they're spending it on items that are going to reoccur every year. That's the problem, because once you give, you can't take it back.
Right.
We
The
already
fights are coming.
Jonathan, are you able to speak and us hear you? Uh-oh, nope, we still can't hear you.
Doug, is your audio working?
As far as I know, good afternoon.
We got
Yes.
you. All
A
right.
legislative committee ahead of schedule?
darn right.
My God.
Well, this particular committee has to wait for the other body to send us the only vehicle that we have to work on. And right about this time of year, we're running out of stuff to talk about. So,
Okay.
and that's not to disparage you guys for coming to give a report on the subject, but the bottom line is it's getting harder and harder to schedule in the afternoon. So,
Well, with
We got
Tim on board, Doug, you must be way ahead of everything now, because Tim's he's a star employee there.
Well, we have a major misalignment though. Doug likes to start working at like 6 a.m.
Okay.
You know, I'm just easing into the day at about, 9:30, the fire.
Yeah, but
Gets
then you
lit
don't
in the
stop.
brain.
Then you're good all day, right straight through, so you don't stop.
No.
we missed the donuts, Tim.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Well, I wind up eating them all because you're not here to scavenge for them. So weight issues are becoming a.
Right. Alex, I'm assuming we're still on YouTube, so we're going to get ourselves underway because it is Friday and it is snowing. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming by. We have a subject to talk about, this specifically the dam report. We've had a lot of fun with that statement over the past couple of days. I want to remind all three of you that we are, in fact, on YouTube. We have an audience out there that we don't have any idea who it might be. In fact, I was surprised to see on one occasion Tim was actually watching us, and that kind of caught me by surprise. But there are people who are out there watching. We've had a number of individuals. We don't know whether they are experts in this field or not. They could very well be school-age kids who are learning about the committee process and government and how it all works. So as you are testifying about this particular subject, if I interrupt you, it's not going to be because I'm trying to be rude. It'll be because you may have used some vernacular or an acronym that we may be familiar with, but it red flags in my mind that some of our audience may not be familiar with. And I'll just simply ask you to explain X, Y, or Z as we go. The other part of this is, since none of the three of you have been before us before, I do ask you in addition, for the benefit of those folks out there in YouTube land, that as you begin your testimony, you give us a brief biographical sketch, and then we can launch into your testimony. But it's helpful for our audience to know who you are and how you fit into this process. With that, Auditor Hoffer is joined us, and you are first on my list. I don't know whether you have scheduled these other two guys in some kind of order, but I'll turn the floor over to you first and say welcome back to Senate Institutions, such as it is.
Thank you very much, Senator. And yes, I will start off, but it's really Tim and Jonathan's show. I'll say very briefly that this issue came to us in the office from one of my staff. It was a suggestion a few years ago, and I knew nothing about it, and I learned a lot, and I'm glad we pursued this objective. It's an interesting subject. The good news is that kind of like Andy Polito in years past, the commissioner told us at the end of the process, and with all honesty, he said, look, this is good work. Thank you. We're going to get right on this. And, you know, it's easy to say that, but I think he meant it. And that's what we look for at the end of the process. We don't always get that, of course. So, you know, luckily, also, we didn't find, nor do I think there are any imminent threats to Vermonters. There are some issues that need to be addressed, but I believe the agency, or the department, I should say, is going to get on it. So that's the good news. So I'll turn it over to Tim and ask him and Jonathan to tell you what we found. Thank
Tim,
you.
before you begin, Tim, Jonathan, I'm advised that you may want to call in and leave your camera on. And Alex can send you a link for the telephone number if you don't have that already. Alex, did you catch that?
I did, yes. I'll send that over for you.
Okay, thank you. Tim, welcome back.
Well, thank you. Tim Ash here as Deputy State Auditor. And before I get started, Senator Benning, can I do a screen share, or should I assume you guys would just pull up the thing on the side?
We can do it either way. Mr. McCracken gets cracking as soon as he can possibly hear somebody ask a request. And what is your preference?
I could probably, if I control it, it's probably easier, so we can skip me trying to give direction or anything like that. And you won't have to look in two
You've got
places.
screen share control now.
All right, let me see if I can make this work. And you'll tell me if we're looking at the same thing.
We are Department of Environmental Conservation's Dam Safety Program.
All right.
Got you jogging, Tim. Yep.
All right, we got that part solved. This is good. So Senator Benning, to your point about the vernacular, I want to be clear every time I say the word dam, I am not using a bad word here. It is a pun-heavy, pun-rich report, but I will not be deliberately making any such comments. So anytime we do a performance audit, there have to be very specific objectives that the audit is testing against. And for the Dam Safety Program audit, as you can see here, it was really to see if the dams that are under DEC's oversight and review that are in poor condition and represent a high or significant hazard have been, the owners of those dams have been asked to perform improvements within specific timeframes, and then to see what the follow-up is to ensure that those things occur. I'll talk in a second about what it means to be a higher significant hazard in poor condition. So these two side-by-side charts reflect the old hazard classification system through 2020. And then on the other side is the new ones. And this was the result of rules, which I think Senator Benning, you might be the only LCAR member, and we're probably there to approve this switchover. The important distinction between, for the purposes of this audit, high hazard before meant that more than a few people would potentially lose their life if the dam failed. And a significant hazard meant that perhaps just a few, but then also property damage. The new dam classification system for high hazard is one or more people might lose their life in the event of a failure. Significant no longer has an assumption that there will be loss of life, but rather major or extensive property damage. So the report focuses on those high and significant hazards, the ones that will cause loss of life or major or significant hazard. DEC is not the only state entity that has oversight of dams, but is the primary one. There are about 1,000 dams in the current inventory. And then according to A&R staff, there might be as many as 1,000 other dams that are out there, likely to be very small ones, that they either haven't inventoried or don't know about. This gives some sense of the scale of those dams. The high hazard and significant, the ones that are most worrisome, are the ones that you see to the two rightmost bars, and we're talking a little bit under 200.
Okay,
Not
Tim,
sure.
let me interrupt you for just a second. Yesterday, we were having testimony from BGS about a new diagnostic tool that would essentially have every piece of brick and mortar of the state plugged into it. And the tool is designed in such a way that it would keep tabs on a day-to-day basis, literally, of the status of all the state's brick and mortar. I don't know if there's anything that is similar to that in this discussion, but eventually I'm hoping you're going to get to talking about how you make these assessments and what is the methodology that's going into the conversation.
Sure thing. So hopefully we'll touch on that, and if not, just follow up with another question. So
Okay.
the conditions themselves, so it's one thing that if a dam failed, it might cause loss of life or damage property, but they can be in very excellent condition, so we might not be very worried. So anything that's not in good or fair condition are the ones that are of primary concern. As you can see, poor condition, as you read it, under normal loading conditions could have damage or some kind of failure. And so that's where the primary emphasis was. These inspections are being done by DEC staff, based on their professional expertise in understanding this. Presumably at times they work with contracted engineers where appropriate. So among dams that are in poor condition, this is, it's hard to conceive of what does it mean that it's actually in poor condition? What might it look like? Anybody who knows Curtis Pond in Calais, which is right near the Whammy Bar, for those of you who have ever been there, which is a community gathering spot, but a very legendary one there.
Tim, was that for the kids who are watching? That's good.
The Whammy Bar is a all ages community institution in Calais. Everyone should know about. But here you can see like water seeping through the wall of the dam here is a very problematic visual. Here you have the Thurman Dix Reservoir Dam in orange. You can see the concrete breaking apart on those vertical and some horizontal lines, all signs that there could be potential trouble down the road. Of the same dam, looking at it from another angle, you can see the exposed rebar, which is a sign that the concrete has been crumbling underneath. And the question is, will the water result in a massive failure there? This is quite a significant dam. So in addition to sort of establishing that there are a substantial number of dams that are in poor condition, but that if they failed would be threatening life and property, there's the issue of how long they've been lingering in poor condition. And here you can see the dams that were the focus of this review. And in the rightmost column, you can see the length of time that the dams have been known to be in poor condition, ranging from 3 all the way up to 18 years. So when an inspection is done, even in these very concerning dams where a failure would be a really serious, would have serious negative impacts on people and property, there has not been to this date a clear strategy or the enforcement powers at the department to require that the improvements be made. And it also holds, in fact, for some state and local government owned dams. As you can see on this list, there are several local government dams. The dam in Whitingham is a state dam, as are the Kent Pond and Gale Meadows dams. So, the picture this paints is one of an infrastructure, often state-owned or state overseen, that has some real challenges moving forward. We made a series of—
Tim, if I can interrupt, how is it that a dam owner is not able to be determined in this day and age?
Well, it's a very good question. In this case, and I'm not sure if Jonathan is able to speak it to be heard yet with the audio. The Curtis Pond Dam is surrounded by a number of residential properties. And through that process, as properties have turned over with one new owner to the next, there has been created this gray area. But your question, Senator Benning, is one we have ourselves asked, which is, how is this not something that's captured in the deed for whichever property has held this all this time? But needless to say, many of the property owners there are not in a rush to be the legal owner of a dam that, is quite old and in actually quite bad shape. So that's one that you might want to ask DEC, because they've had to interact directly with the property owners on that. But that's the only one on this list that would meet that test.
Okay.
We made a series of recommendations in the report. I'm not going to go through each one of them, but I'll largely summarize that in the next phase of rulemaking, we recommend that there be more explicit timeframes for remedying issues with some of the dams that are in bad shape, that there be more clear guidance about when the department can step in and require things, that the inspection process be tidied up. One of the limitations has been there's been just 2 staff people for the program. They have acknowledged, and it's in our report, that they say that understaffing has largely required them to do some internal prioritizing, and that has prevented them from being able to, in a timely way, do the inspections. So some of the dams aren't being inspected at the frequency required by state rule. The data that's being entered into the inventory and the basis of determining whether dams are significant or high hazard are out of date. So we actually don't have a very clear understanding of whether some dams that currently are listed as significant may actually be high hazard dams or vice versa. The condition of dams is an incomplete data set. So in terms of prioritizing which dams should be improved first, until the inspections occur, it becomes a real challenge to know, whether the inventory of dams and the prioritization of improvements is a sound one. We found, interestingly, there are a number of state-owned dams, not just owned by ANR, but AOT, the state colleges, I believe, are the others. And we found that when DEC's dam safety program was doing the inspections, the information about the inspections themselves was not always being transmitted to the other state agency responsible as the owner of those dams. So that is a fairly modest recommendation, but an important one, because if, for instance, AOT has a dam that's in bad shape, the only way we can hold, as the public can hold AOT accountable, is if they know the condition that the dam is in. The other is, these are mostly about getting the categorization up to date, so that the information is really guiding smart practices. And I'll maybe close on this last piece. There was an interesting finding in the report, which is that the Public Utility Commission, which has oversight over the power producing dams, had a different inspection schedule and a different hazard categorization, so that you could have more protection if you live downstream of a DEC dam than if you lived below a Public Utility Commission overseen dam. The auditor reached out to the chair of the Public Utility Commission, suggesting that they try to align the inspection frequency and the categorization of these dams. And we were very appreciative that Chair Roisman responded very quickly and said that they would initiate rules at the PUC to try to bring those into alignment now. But the reason why we think this has turned out to be a very timely audit from the point of view of this committee and your counterpart in the House is we know that one, the Green River Dam expenditure in the budget adjustment bill to explore the health of that dam before the state makes a decision does speak to making sure that there's also a better understanding of the existing state-owned dams, not just what it will take to keep a new one in good shape, but what the current inventory looks like. And we also identify in the proposed adjustment to the capital bill that the administration brought forward a month or so ago that they put $3.5 million on the table for some kind of deeper inspections of some of the state-owned dams. And armed with the audit report, you guys are in I think, a good position to ask the right questions about whether this is part of a complete systematic approach that'll make sure that people are protected from potential dam failures. And before I wrap, I'll just say that as the auditor mentioned, the department was very, very collaborative throughout the whole thing. And we were very appreciative that their responses to the audit findings were constructive, that they acknowledge that they hope to take the information and use some of it to improve their performance. So we thought that was very encouraging and wanted to recognize that. So I'm going to pop out of there.
So you've made the findings, you've issued the report. Is there a way that your office checks back in again, so to speak, to see if any progress is being made?
Yeah, Tim, I'll answer that. Yes, Senator, routinely with every single audit, we revisit the recommendations 1 year and 3 years subsequent to the issuance of the report to determine the extent to which the auditee, in this case, DEC, have implemented our recommendations. And we report that to the committees of jurisdiction that year.
Okay. So somebody will be on this committee, no doubt, that will have heard this story once before and will be able to assess what kind of progress has been made.
Yes, I hope so.
All right. Jonathan, have we figured out your audio situation yet?
I believe so. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. My name is Jonathan Kingston. I'm an audit manager at the State Auditor's Office, and I was the audit manager that oversaw this audit and had great assistance from a wonderful senior auditor in our office on this project.
We're assuming you're not referring to Tim at this point.
I received oversight from Tim, so.
Careful, Jonathan, with your answer.
Yeah, I thought Tim summarized it very well. Bottom line, they recently changed the way they define what is a high hazard potential, what is a significant hazard potential. I say we as a nation used to be a little more risk tolerant, it appears. We used to say a dam that allows for the possible loss of a few lives was significant hazard. And if it was more than a few lives, then we would make it a high hazard potential. Well, now nationwide, the standard is moving. If there's even the potential for a single loss of life, we're going to consider it as a high hazard classification. But one of the things that DEC will need to do is go through and reassess the hazard classifications of the dams within the state. And what this will do is this drives our inspection schedule. A dam that has the potential for a loss of life, if it fails, needs to be inspected at a minimum every 2 years. And not to get it too into the weeds, but it changes their entire inspection schedule. And then that change, they'll need to figure out, well, based on their staffing levels, what are they able to do and what are they not doing? And then at the same time, they need to be better recording the condition of dam information so we understand our portfolio as a state. You know, how many dams of this kind of hazard potential rating are in what condition? So how many are in poor condition? And then they can come to you and say, what resources are needed, essentially.
So I raised this question earlier. Yesterday, we were talking with BGS about a new tool being implemented that literally takes all states' brick and mortar, has it plugged into a database. The database is constantly monitored in real time. And so, for instance, if major maintenance becomes an issue, they get an alarm bell going off to let them know that. And I'm curious to know whether these dams are either now in or planned to be in such a monitoring device.
Senator, I think you'd probably have to ask BGS if they intend to work with DEC to kind of merge the two data sets. What the audit did find is that the existing inventory that DEC keeps is not up to date. So that initial inspection and determining the condition of the dams and making sure the inventory is accurate and the hazard categorization is accurate, that's the single most important thing I think that the audit takeaway is. Then folding it into that larger infrastructure planning system that you're referring at BGS may help as well. One of the other findings is that the data about Vermont's dams, the dams that DEC is responsible for overseeing, the data didn't always match up with what had been reported in a federal database, which was including some of those very Vermont dams, which could have been data entry issues and so on. So you've really got two questions as it relates to DEC. There's the operational issues about staffing and whether they have the requisite number of people. But then there's the infrastructure money to determine whether you are supporting the kind of efforts to take dams that are in poor condition and getting them improved. I know Senator Mazza from the Transportation Committee, trying to get things out of poor condition when it comes to roadways or other infrastructure is always priority. In this case, we've got state-owned infrastructure in some cases, which has been in poor condition for a very long time, and is in some ways maybe because it's often out of sight and out of mind. But if it fails, it will very much be in sight and in mind. I see Doug as his.
Yes, now I see his hand. It's blended in with the sky over the office building there.
Yeah, just quickly, I don't know the extent to which BGS's proposed application will include all the dams, because very few of them are state-owned. So when you refer to brick and mortar, obviously there's a distinction between what the state literally owns and what the state has responsibility for monitoring. So you can check with BGS on that, but if it's only state dams, then there's a heck of a lot of them that won't be part of that data set.
Yeah, it's a good point. Well, it's worth having a conversation with the famous dam engineers, as we called them. We've had them in a couple of weeks ago. Senator McCormick.
Thanks. The conversation has gone right where I wanted to go. On the list of going forward items, the bottom item referred to privately owned dams. And I'm being parochial here. I represent Plymouth, it's Windsor County town, which has a beautiful string of lakes, chain of lakes. I always presumed that the dam was the state's, and I only found out this week on another matter that it's actually not. It's privately owned and in bad shape. And what do we do about what is our relationship with privately owned dams? Because the lakes are certainly the waters of the state.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I'll weigh in briefly here. I was kind of curious about this and the extent to which the department was not being more aggressive. And I think, as you probably know better than I, having been at this longer than I have, that their default setting in regulatory matters is to try to work with people rather than have a heavy hand. And I think there's merit to that. But in some cases, it's not enough to say, well, they own the dam, but they weren't aware of their obligations or what that might entail when things went south. And this relates to something I was going to mention. The legislature, as Senator Benning would probably know, because if Tim was ready, he's on LCAR, they have a two-part regulatory or rulemaking procedure. And the second half of that was expected to be completed by July 1 of this year. If they haven't already, we learned from the commissioner that they're going to come in and ask for another year. And this relates to the question at the core of this audit that Jonathan mentioned, which is, yes, it's one thing to evaluate the condition of the dam and inform the owner, but are you going to tell them with any authority when they have to address the problem? And they don't yet have that authority because, as I understand it, they never asked for it. It's not as if you told them they couldn't. It's just their ethos not to be that aggressive. And now effectively you have told them, well, we want you to be a little more aggressive, I think. So it's kind of an interesting issue what you raise. These private dam owners, if they've owned them for 100 years through the family, then you can understand why there might be some confusion. But this is the 21st century, and I think DEC has an obligation to work with these guys. Now, they have told us, Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong, that there are some federal programs that provide some monies to assist dam owners who may not have the resources to get it done in a timely manner if it's a serious threat. And that's as it should be. But what about the other 50 or 100 dam owners? I don't know the answer, but it's kind of an interesting question.
It's a second component there that's a little bit disconcerting, because in your list, I'll use Linden Institute's dam as an example. It's at the highest level. It's been, if my numbers are correctly recalled here, I think 18 plus years since any serious attention was given to it. But there's no possible way Linden Institute could come up with the kind of money necessary to replace it. And I suspect that has to at some point fall into the legislature's discussion about how do you raise the cash to take care of these. As Dick correctly points out, these are public waterways and owned by the state. So this may be a bigger can of worms that we were thinking it was going to be this afternoon.
Well, and I just add, there are, it's hard to talk about existing federal programs at a time with these recovery monies. It almost makes some of them seem small in comparison, but there are federal programs that were meant to support the improvement of older dams. I'm assuming that many of those, because Vermont's not unique, are ones that are held by private entities, but for which there's a public interest. So I'm guessing there's a sort of public-private component to many of those. And then just one last piece to Senator McCormick's question. Doug was exactly right in talking about the rulemaking and how that may or may not clarify the department's authority over private owners. There is one exception to that, which is if the department were determined that there is an imminent threat of collapse. They go out there and it's heaving and it looks like it's coming down. The department, I believe today, has the ability to take urgent emergency action on their own or by compelling the owner. But that's if it's truly on the verge of collapse, not just in really bad shape and needs to get fixed in the next year or 2 years.
Now, if I may, the question we've been focused on the threat downstream. If the dam collapses, you're going to get a perhaps deadly flood. Short of that, upstream, as a dam leaks or as it's dealt with in part by lowering it and giving it less water to hold back, which is a strategy, the quality of the lake deteriorates. It becomes a less pleasant lake. Do we address that at all?
Not to my knowledge, no. Now, obviously, part of the mission of the department and broadly the agency encompasses both of those issues, the safety of the dam and the resource that we are responsible for. But we only looked at the dam safety component of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's the more pressing issue, I guess.
Jonathan?
Yeah, DEC has in the past done some risk mitigation measures for dams when they've been very concerned about them. And it's involved in one instance, when you go on their website, they give an example of a lake that they have a lower water level requirement to reduce the loading on the dam now. Doug and Tim are right. There's very limited funding for private dam owners. There is a federal program but it's only for dams that are high hazard potential. But the majority of dams in Vermont are actually not high hazard potential. They're significant or less. But still, there's environmental damages. There's still other property damage, many other adverse things that can happen. So the federal funding is only available for high hazard potential, and then the state has an unsafe dam fund, which is maxed. The limit, as I recall, is $50,000 a dam owner can get from this fund. And for an unsafe dam, it's essentially determined to be almost on the verge of collapse kind of thing. It's an extreme imminent danger. It's a special class of its own. It's below poor condition. So for the private dam owner, you're absolutely correct. There is limited government resources, to put it bluntly, for the private dam owner.
Well, if a system was to be set up that had a constant monitoring of things like major maintenance and a method of seeking from whatever pocket the resources necessary to change out a dam, if that got hit by an Irene, for instance, who would be the state agency that would be in charge of that entire conversation?
I think it would be DEC for sure. They have the legal authority now. I'm not aware, unless it's a dam, as we discussed, that is related to power production, then that could be the PUC or FERC. But in this case, and just as a thought with regard to those rare, so far thankfully rare circumstances where work on a dam is required in a very short period of time, maybe not an emergency, but close to it, and the owner or owners simply do not have the resources and the federal money is not sufficient or not available. And this is not from the audit, this is just a personal suggestion. You folks could consider an opportunity where if you invest, pick a number, $500,000 or $1 million in a dam and mitigating risk, you are doing two things. You're taking the cost away from the landowner and you're improving the value of the property. You could take an equity position in that property. That would seem fair to me. That is not the official position of the auditor's office, however.
The report that you're presenting to us, did that also go to the natural resources committees?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
As well as appropriations, since some of it.
They don't know what they're doing in approach. I'm hoping that's on YouTube so Jane can hear it at some point down the road.
Yeah.
Russ.
And with that, Doug, I wonder even how much of a fight you'd get from some of these dam owners who have this. They're deriving no income from this. It's more of a liability for them to have that. I bet it wouldn't be much of a fight to take over equity position on a lot of those properties. They're probably just hoping that happens.
That may be true. Good point.
It's interesting. It's going to bring some more conversation, I think, between committees. Committee, other questions? I don't see any hands. Gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming by this afternoon. I'm sure we'll be having you back at some point.
Look forward to it.
We have the vehicle that we're supposed to be working on still over on the other side. We're not going to get it until probably 2 or 3 weeks after crossover week. But when we get it, should there be any other ideas or things you might want to bring into the conversation, don't hesitate to reach out and we'll pick it up from there.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Doug, take good care of Tim, okay?
I'll try. Keep an eye on him. It's okay.
All right, okay. If you have any problems, give me a call.
Is the lock on his side of the door or on your side of the door?
Is this your last committee meeting virtually before going back?
Well, no, not necessarily, because this new set of rules that we have, we are allowed to be meeting remotely if the chair indicates it's okay. And I suspect each chair will say it's okay. So there'll be a mishmash of folks who are in the committee room and others who are meeting remotely.
Tim, are you the only one not running for Congress this year or Lieutenant Governor? I mean, I gotta, I can't believe this. What's going on?
I would heartily encourage you to jump into that Democratic primary for lieutenant governor. Go right ahead. I've played the math on this one. The more the merrier.
Have a good break, everybody.
All right. Thanks. Good to see you guys.
Nice to
Thank
meet
you
everybody.
very much.
Bye.
I miss
you.
you, Tim.
Tim's not biting on that one.
Nope.